When surveyed, 90% of people say that they have experienced the loss of a loved one. Now, this is from Vitus, California, 2017. This fact surprised me, but it also made me feel comforted in knowing that I was not alone in my feelings, if you guys remember from my last couple of speeches. But then it kind of made me think also, if 90% of people have experienced the loss of a loved one, then why is grief such a taboo subject? And why does nobody approach it or nobody talk about it? Help Guide says that you might grieve after moving away from home, graduating college, or changing jobs. Melinda Smith, 2019, California. How many of you guys have experienced at least one of these? I mean, we're all in college. That's a pretty big, massive change as it is. And then it also made me start to think, well, if 90% of people have experienced grief through death, then how many people are experiencing grief just through life change and events that happen? Today I want to help explain grief and how the emotions surrounding and that come with it are not only relevant whenever death comes around. There are 5 stages of grief. There are denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. Now, I'm going to explain each of these 5 stages in that order, but keep in mind there's lots of intermix and intermingling and overlap between all 5. So picture this. You just get home from your sophomore year of high school, you're going to help your mom make dinner, and your dad comes home from work and he says, Gerald, oh my gosh, I have great news, but there's a catch. I just got my dream job, and we're going to have to move to Ohio in a month. But you live in Texas, and you are floored because you don't want to move to Ohio. And so that thought that you're going to have to move up and out of your current reality to a brand new state, it might take a couple days or weeks to settle in. And in those days or weeks, that's the first stage of grief, denial. You're not yet accepting what's about to happen. And now nobody died, but your current reality is about to be slaughtered. And since your current reality is about to be slaughtered by your father, you might be a little bit angry at him for getting that new job. And the second stage of grief is anger. Anger can look like you're lashing out at your favorite high school teacher, or you don't want to help your mom make dinner anymore because you're moving states because of her husband. And maybe you're being meaner to your siblings than you normally are. Pretty much, anger is a bad place to be, and no one's going to want you around. You don't want to be around. And it's going to lead to some isolation. And in this isolation, you're going to start really thinking of ways that you can keep your current normal. This can kind of lead you to bargaining, where you have so much alone time and you're just like, okay, what can I do to stay in Texas and not go to Ohio? So you go up to mommy and daddy and you say, Mommy and Daddy, can I please move in with my cousins or my aunties or my uncles? Please, I don't want to move to Ohio. And your mommy and daddy look at you and they say, Gerald, you're going to move with us whether you want to or not, so suck it up. Automatically, maybe some anger, denial, more some bargaining comes back. But at the end of the day, depression sets in. That's the 4th stage of grief, depression. Because you finally realize that nothing you do can fix the situation. There's no way out of changing your current reality, and so you get sad. And maybe you move to this brand new state, kind of sad, and maybe you move into your brand new house, kind of sad. And you don't have anything to talk about with anyone because all you can think about is living in Texas and how much happy you were there. But say time goes on and yes, you quit your hobbies because you were sad and your sleep patterns might change and your eating habits might change. But say you're in Ohio, you've been there for about a month, you're kind of settled in. Maybe there's some cooler kids at class that you want to get to know. Maybe there's some more motivation to get up in the morning and to make friends in all your classes. And this kind of leads you into the 5th stage of grief, acceptance, where there's a difference in dealing with depression and being depressed, I think. Dealing with depression is more like there's waves of sadness that come over you rather than just being sad. And so maybe in this 5th stage of acceptance, or this 5th stage of grief, which is acceptance, you still might get a little bit sad, but you're happy. You're happy about life. You want to go to school. Maybe you want to meet your dad's boss because you're like, man, thanks for moving me here. This is great. So maybe you're not so angry at your dad anymore. Now, I don't really know how many of you guys have experienced typical grief, but I do know that each of you have experienced a massive life change. Now, I 5 steps kind of more clear on the emotions that are entailed with each stage, regardless if they're really in that order. Now, but keep in mind that grief is a natural though emotionally difficult part of life, one that cannot be easily explained in 5 simple stages from Feldman 2017 Santa Clara University. These 5 stages of grief are more like stair steps, where you're stepping up and down, down, up, up, up. You're not really going from floor to floor, you're just kind of going in between the floors. But I hope that these 5 stages of grief are informative in how your brain emotionally processes these physical changes that we have to go through in this everyday life.